My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Hey everybody. I hope this episode finds you doing okay and alright today. So, I wanted to originally do an episode on religion versus spirituality, and that's going to come. I'm going to do an episode on that. But there have been a lot of things happening in the last week that I think I need to address. I would feel like I'm completely ignoring a huge world event. Really big news. That affects everybody, I think, on a very deep level. Many people on a deep level, whether it brings them joy or sadness. And I have to say, I am a little bit nervous doing this episode. I'm curious what kind of response it's going to get. And I'm also learning to just speak my mind and not worry about the response, as long as I do it all as respectfully as possible. And I'm just going to say at the top of this episode that for many of you who do follow me on social media, you know I lean progressive in political thinking and ideology. You know that I am an out gay man. You know that I post some once in a while about supporting the transgender community. And you might have noticed recently that I voted for Kamala Harris as president. And what I want to say about that before I go into all of this is going to be my opinion in this episode. I represent my own opinion. No one else is speaking here. I'm not speaking for anybody. I'm not speaking for any other progressive either, because there are things I'm going to say that are going to challenge that part of the political spectrum in this podcast episode. So 2 things I want to say. One is maybe you're asking, why, Juan, are you talking about this on a mediumship or supernatural podcast? Well, I mentioned maybe a few episodes ago that I want to lean more into self-empowerment on this podcast. I want to continue talking about psychic energy and mediumship and the supernatural. And I want to talk about self-empowerment within the context of spirituality, within the context of asking the big questions about life in the universe and the afterlife, and what it means to have an afterlife to look forward to, how that impacts how we view ourselves and how we view each other. And I think that right now there is a struggle for people to be their most authentic selves on all ends of the political spectrum. And so then, for me, that ties back to self-empowerment. Number 2, I will never turn away someone who thinks politically differently from me from getting a reading from me. And it's not because I'm taking their money. It's because I believe every single human being, regardless of what they believe in, deserves a healing journey. Every single human being is on a spiritual journey. We are all souls in human bodies. We may call people soulless. You may call somebody soulless, but there is a soul in there. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. That person was once a child. It doesn't excuse their behavior if they hurt you or they hurt other people. But that person was once a little boy, a little girl, a little child. What must have happened in their childhood? What messages must they have heard? What messages must they have heard in their childhood to behave in such a way as an adult? And that is, on a soul level, I think something to consider, but not to excuse behavior. So I do not believe in shunning people because they think differently from me. I believe in setting boundaries of people who want to disrespect me and see me as a second-class citizen, but they are a soul. So if you are someone who thinks politically differently than I do, than the way I think, I'm not telling you to not listen to my stuff. I'm not telling you that you don't deserve healing. And forget the reading part of it. I mean, I've met some psychics who say they'll never do a reading for a Trump supporter. And that doesn't sit right with me personally. Everyone has a right to do what they want with their own business. But first of all, I shouldn't know whether you're a Trump supporter or a Democrat or an independent. I shouldn't know any of that. Like, that's none of my business. But if it's something that, I think if someone were to make that very apparent in booking a reading with me, then they're getting a reading for the wrong reason. There's no reason to bring up politics. But if I happen to find out that someone was a Trump supporter, that wouldn't make me not want to give them a healing message, free or paid, because healing is for everybody. And it's the reason I do live readings on Instagram too. It's like they say, I've heard someone say recently, if a building is on fire, I'm not going to ask first, oh, are they a Democrat or Republican? Are they Christian or are they Muslim? Are they black or are they white or are they Asian or are they indigenous? I'm not going to ask. It doesn't matter. It's a human being. So I'm going to share with you first just my experience in the past week with all the news. And then I'm going to tell you 3 ways that hopefully will help you in managing what comes after this past week. Ways to cope, if you will, or ways to manage your time in the midst of all the news going on. And I'm nervous sharing this because it is very taboo for psychics and mediums to talk about politics. But then there's the thing. There are psychics and mediums who've made their politics very apparent on Instagram. And some of them I don't agree with. And that's fine. But then why don't I have the ability to speak my mind too? And I think people shouldn't be shocked at what I'm going to say or what I've said already so far in this episode. Because I think it's very obvious I lean progressive. And I've probably said that a couple times on this podcast already. And so my goal in this episode, to kind of tie it with a bow before I open the present, I don't know what I'm saying, tie it with a bow, and then we're going to unwrap it again, is I want to bring everyone some hope. It may feel like a very stressful time, but I want to bring us some hope. That's the goal of this episode. But first, I'm going to share with you what I went through, and maybe you can relate. So, when I got the news that Donald Trump won the election, I felt very worried because one of the first things I thought of is, there's so many people who voted for him because of immigration, that issue of immigration and the border, fiscal issues. Maybe they like the way he wants to do his economics. They like that better. And something, I was watching The View today on ABC, and someone said, do racists and misogynists vote for Trump? Absolutely. Is everyone who voted for Trump a racist and a misogynist? Absolutely not. And to an extent, I agree with that because I think there are really well-meaning people that see something else there that they think is going to benefit our country, the USA. But I couldn't help but feel very sad because I thought about just some rights that people have in this country that may shift. And, it's not even about, I wish I could just say, what am I trying to say? As a gay man, I'm nervous that I won't be able to marry somebody in 8 years because of the pendulum shift, swinging the other way. But the reason I voted the way I did is I was really keeping many different kinds of people in mind. And to only think about myself and my own rights, I think is a little self-centered. And so I'm thinking about women and trans people who have ovaries and need doctors and gynecologists and need some procedures done to save their life. I'm thinking of people who may not be able to get overtime pay if that goes into effect. I'm thinking of Black and brown folks who feel unsafe in their communities because they feel racially profiled or they are racially profiled. And I think that regardless of whether someone votes for somebody because of the racism and bigotry or not, I think no one can deny that there is definitely a sense of like this country belongs to us, and people who want to tell us that our country was founded on a genocide, based on a genocide, well, because of a genocide and enslavement, you're not allowed to talk about that. Don't make us feel guilty. I think that really makes people who are descendants of those who were enslaved, those who were killed, feel very left out of the conversation and very ignored, instead of having this mirror for us to look at as a country. So these are all the things that were going on through my mind. And the night before, I was trying to get my mind off of the election results that were slowly coming in. I was watching the show Sex Education, and there's a transgender character who has a really, really low point. And I, in their storyline rather, and I had to pause the show because I started bawling, because I started thinking, you know, if certain things get put into place in this country, people who just want to be themselves and live their lives are going to feel like they're not allowed to be who they are. And that's where I bring this back to the theme of authenticity and self-empowerment. I believe in a world where you just mind your own business as long as no one is hurting anybody else or hurting themselves. And I feel like we're in this phase as a world, as a country, as a world, where we want our side to win. And something I always, I don't love sports. I'm not a sports person, but sometimes I always think about, like with sports, I don't quite understand sports, because why would you tell, let's say, for example, two people, hey, you're the red team, you're the blue team, now go at it, and we're all going to watch you and pay to watch you. It doesn't make sense to me, but it also, it's a spectator thing, right? It's like why do I go to the movies to look at a screen for projection? Fair, okay? Sports are cool. Not my thing, but they're cool, fine. But it's like, I think at least in the United States, there is this obsession with competition and winning, and reality TV is like so much a part of that. Who's going to end up on top of everybody else in the competition, or in being the cattiest, making the most snide remarks? Who's going to be the one who claps back the best? And I think this fuels so much of our society as an American culture. And I think I was watching on The View today also, Congresswoman Sarah McBride of the state of Delaware is the first transgender, openly transgender person to be in the, I think it's in the House. No, senator? I think it's the House. Yeah, I think it's in the House. I'm so sorry. I am not very accurate in my information, but she is the first transgender person to make history being elected in her role by her state. And she said something that I thought was brilliant. And I'm kind of obsessed with her now because I've never seen her talk before. She said that we're in this phase, because they asked her, what are you thinking of the anti-transgender ads, right, that the Trump campaign put out there? And she said, I wasn't elected to be the leader of a movement. I was elected to represent all people of my state. And I'm going to paraphrase her. New York noises, pardon me. It's nice and cool outside. The window is open. Should I wait? No, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to keep talking. We're going to keep talking. So, there we go. It's fading out. Congresswoman Sarah McBride said that right now we're in this mode in our country where we are telling people, well, you don't know what it's like to hurt like me. And I hurt more than you do. And she said she recognizes this on either side of the political spectrum. And I thought that was so brilliant, because that's almost exactly how I've been viewing the world, our country, for quite a few years now. That we are competing for pain. We're competing for who is hurting the most, and then using that to just shut other people up. Now, I want to say there are people who are truly, truly in pain and deserve to be heard for their pain. That's not, I'm not saying, I don't think Congresswoman McBride was saying we should ignore people's pain. We should be listening to each other, but we don't listen to each other. We don't. And I think that is something, like, listening is so powerful. And I think that through listening, we could come to a place of empowerment. And now I'm thinking, Juan, what the heck does this have to do with mediumship, the supernatural spirituality? But I really think to achieve, and I didn't write the Bible, I didn't write any godly text. This is just my own opinion. And based on some books I've read, like Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, plug. I believe that spiritual enlightenment comes from understanding that we are here to coexist. We're not getting rid of each other. Now, if you want to get rid of each other, that leads us down a very dangerous road. But I'm thinking, and I'm hoping that that is not the solution that we want. We have to coexist. There's always going to be somebody that thinks I'm a second-class citizen. It's always going to happen. Always. It's never going to end. But I will stand for their right to say whatever they want to say about me, but not for a right to restrict me from living my life. And I'm not going to restrict them from living their life either. And I think that is what coexistence entails. I don't got to like you. I don't got to like what you're saying. But you have the right to say what you're saying. You have the right to think however way you feel. But you don't have a right to restrict me from living my life when I'm not hurting a single person or myself. I think that that is a key. One of the keys to spiritual enlightenment. And I think another thing I want to bring up is, I think on my end of the political spectrum, there is such a haste to shut people down when they get something wrong or they don't understand something. And we say, oh, just Google it. It's on Google. There are articles. I find that very dismissive. And if I'm told the same thing by somebody who thinks differently than I do, I'm not going to Google it, because I know what I know. I believe what I believe. So humble. So I feel like there is so much haste to judge. Now, some people will say, there's a quote going around that I did repost, that we can agree to disagree unless your belief, it's a James Baldwin quote, I'm paraphrasing, unless your belief places me as a second-class citizen and denies me of my existence. And I'm at that point where I'm starting to feel that way. But that's the thing. I don't have to be friends with you to recognize that you have as much rights as I do, and that I should have as much rights as you do. I don't have to be a buddy with you. We don't have to like each other for me to acknowledge your existence as valid. And I think that's politically how I feel. I'm here to make sure everyone can live their life as authentically as possible, as safely as possible, without people being on top of them, being nosy, telling people you shouldn't wear a dress, you shouldn't wear heels because you were born this way, And I think one of the first things I thought about, and I'm going to bring us into those 3 ways to manage this time right now. Inner child healing was a big deal for me in the last couple years, as I've shared on this podcast before. And I'm going to mention that as as the last thing on the list. Not the least important, but the last out of 3 things that I want to share as ways to manage is to do that inner child healing. And I'll explain that in a little bit. But here are 3 ways if you're feeling stressed out post-election. And I know people who feel affected by what's going on in the United States over in Europe. I've had people message me saying, like, we're watching and we feel this way. And now, whether you are a Trump supporter or not a Trump supporter, I hope that these 3 things I'm going to share with you are really, really helpful for you. Because again, everyone deserves to heal. And if anyone wants to message me saying, how could you say such a nice thing about Trump supporters? What do you mean? Like, they don't deserve healing? They're just... I don't want to get your messages. Save your breath, save your time. Every human being deserves the right to exist, to speak their mind, but they don't have the right to hurt you. They don't have the right to make you feel less than. That's the difference. Sticks and stones. And I get fired up because I think I'm so over the tribalism. So over it. And I'm nervous that it's going to continue. It is going to continue. But then here are 3 ways to manage with that. Number 1, you've heard this a bazillion times before. Take a social media break. You don't have to go on Instagram today. You don't have to go on Facebook tomorrow. You don't have to go on TikTok for the next week. I don't know about you, but I notice that sometimes I reach for my phone, even when the Instagram app is off my phone, and I want to check Instagram. But then I'm like, oh wait, I deleted it off my phone. It's like a ghost. It's obviously like a ghost vibrate. Like when you feel like your phone's vibrating in your pockets, you reach for it, but nothing really happened. There was no vibration. It's like we're so used to being on our phones, and maybe being on our phones less, seeing less news on social media, seeing less people commenting. The other day, the reason I deleted Instagram for a day, and now I'm locked out, that's a whole other story. Oh, meta. Anyways, the reason I deleted Instagram is because I started wanting to read people's comments, people's responses to the election. What good is that going to do me? I feel the way I feel already. What am I going to do? And I noticed that I do that out of a desire to feel less alone. But it doesn't work because it's just an endless scroll through people's comments. To feel less alone, I mean, in the way I feel about the election. That doesn't do me any good. So I deleted the app, and now I can't get back into it on my phone. So the universe is trying to teach me something, I think. Take a social media break. And also, this one's controversial, but if you feel like you need to unfollow somebody whom you're not very close to, you can do that. There are a couple people that I did unfollow in the last week whom, if I saw them on the street, I would wave hello, but I just don't want to see their stuff on my feed. I don't want to see their political stuff on my feed. And they may notice soon that I did that, and they may get upset with me. And I had to have a really good talk with myself because I got really nervous about them noticing. But they're not my close circle. And they are colleagues in this realm of the psychic world, psychic mediumship world. And see, I'm not the type to be like, oh, you supported this person, don't book this person on your podcast. Every podcast has the right to do whatever they want to do. Book somebody because they lean a certain way, or not book them because they lean a certain way politically. Every podcast has the right to do that. And there are sometimes, I vet people from my podcast and they say something absolutely just not aligned with what I do. So I don't book them. I don't have them on the podcast. I have that right too. But everyone deserves to tell their story. Everyone deserves, again, to feel valid for existing. I just don't want to see political content, specifically political content, that someone posts on my Instagram feed. That is for me to curate. I want to see what I want to see on my Instagram feed. I want to see cute babies and dogs. I want to see memes. I want to see psychic podcasts that I follow. I don't want to see certain content, and that's my right. And take a social media break. Do what you got to do. Be kind to yourself. Something that my therapist has taught me is rule number 1, be fair to yourself. Rule number 2, be fair to other people. Those two things work together. But don't ignore yourself and don't ignore being fair to other people. They got to go together. Number 2, use this time. Use the time we have to plan exciting things in your future. You have a business idea? Plan it. You want to do very artistic social media content? Plan it. You want to start saving more money? Plan it. You want to write a book? Make an outline of the book. Do something that's going to bring excitement to you. While things are feeling chaotic because either you're overjoyed at the election result and now it's like the anticipation, or you feel really stressed out because it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. Use this time, use this energy, whether you're feeling down or you're feeling up. Use the moment to plan something exciting in your life. I have decided, this is not a big announcement. I have decided that I am going to get even more real in how I run my business. Because of the meta issues this week with my account, even though universe may be sending me a message about being off of Instagram, maybe God's sending me a message. What's that song from The Color Purple? God is trying to tell you something. God is trying to tell you something. That's exactly, it could be that. But anyways, because of the meta stuff, I've decided I am not paying for the blue check mark anymore. I'm done. When I didn't have a blue check mark, my engagement was better. And they say with the blue check mark, they push your account up more in the algorithm. It ain't working. I'm paying $15 a month and you can't even help me reset my password? So, I'm not going to pay for that anymore. I'm not going to... also, I had this thought. This is just my own self-judgment. It's not a comment on anybody else. Please don't take this as a comment on your account, Instagram account, if this is you as well. But this is just me. This is Juan. Overthinking. Sometimes I think, well, when people see Juan Francisco Spirit, blue checkmark. Ooh, is he popular? They look 1,400 followers. Oh, he only has 1,400 followers. Why does he have a blue checkmark? So I feel kind of like an imposter, but that's my own. See, that's the inner healing I got to do. I got to get over that. Who cares if people think my blue check mark isn't worth it because I have 1,400 followers? But I want to get more real. I'm tired of paying for a system that doesn't really advocate for my account. Because, I mean, if I'm paying them, I should get some kind of special treatment. I mean, $15, that's a streaming subscription. Get more out of watching movies and TV shows and what. Anyways, not to trash meta. Maybe they'll shadow ban me if I talk too much about them on Instagram. I don't know. But anyways, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to get a little bit smarter in how I invest in my business because let me get real with y'all. I'm in a financial place where I shouldn't really be paying for extra cute stuff for my business. I'm not there yet. I need to go back to the basics and stop trying to invest in something that isn't really giving me a return. Just got to be honest with myself. And it doesn't mean my business is not successful because at the end of the day, I want people to feel empowered. And this podcast is a huge part of my business and a huge part of my mission. And I don't want you to pay to listen to my podcast. So time for me to get real with my business and how I run it. Then number 3, I don't know what I think I did with my hands just now. If you're watching on video, like 3, 4-ish with my hands. Number 3.5. Number 3. If you feel like the world is against you, if you feel like your country is against you, if you feel like people in your life voted against your rights or your existence, please know that what I'm about to say is not meant to be a solution. I just want to suggest it to you, and I want you to think about it because I had this realization. And instead of telling it to you straightforward now, I'm going to give you a piece of what I experienced the day after the election results, or the day of the election results. I went back in time to when I used to put on my mother's heels and put a towel around my waist pretending it was a dress as like a 4-year-old boy. And being heavily, harshly chastised for wanting to do those things. And I felt like, I felt very scared. I felt like I cannot do that. That's bad for me to do. And I was scared of appearing effeminate around a family member who felt that way. I time traveled back to that. And I think I felt like, well, the way things have gone in the United States today, this was the day after the election, I feel like I'm back to that little child who feels like he can't be himself. But then I realized, wait a second. Little Juan, we can be ourselves. I, adult Juan, am going to be the affirming, loving, unconditionally loving adult that you feel you didn't have when you were screamed at for putting on heels as a 4-year-old boy. Hold my hand and we'll be ourselves together because I got you. And I started getting emotional. I received this experience with my inner child during a meditation at an open message circle Wednesday night, the day after the election. And then I understood, I don't feel supported by the systems in place. And I feel like now I have to watch my back a little more when I go to certain parts of the country. But I don't have to feel scared. There's a difference between doing something to protect myself because it's just a smart thing to do. Like not holding hands with a guy in certain parts of New York City. That's probably a smart thing to do. It's unfortunate, but when it comes to my physical safety, I have to be smart. But I don't have to be scared. Because adult Juan's got this. Little Juan doesn't have to be scared. We have to be smart, but we don't have to be scared. And I think about just all those young children. And this is the other thing, the conversation that's been really prominent in this country is that we're going to turn kids gay. We're going to make kids transition into different genders. And, kids pick up on a lot of things. Sure. Kids are very exploratory. They're very curious. There's nothing wrong with that. I wanted to wear heels. And so what if I wanted to wear heels? I'm a happy man today. I'm happy to be a man and I don't want to change that. But I just wanted to wear heels. That's it. Doesn't mean anything. And if it were so easy to influence me as a child, I would have been straight because I grew up with straight parents. And I just think about just children around the country who feel the way little Juan did, wanted to wear heels just for the hell of it, just to feel pretty, who wanted to be Cinderella, who just want to feel like not afraid to be who they are. And my heart aches for those children who feel like they can't be because of the home they grow up in, the school district they're in. That makes me feel very sad. But what I can do is continue voting in a way that supports them, continue advocating for them in different ways, and where there is the space when there is something I cannot fix about that, there's something I cannot just do about something related to that, about these children who experience this, maybe I can then turn inwards and work with my inner child to feel less afraid. I just said a whole bunch of things about myself, so now I'm going to turn it over to you. This third suggestion I have for you is, if you are hurting right now, if you feel unsupported, talk to your inner child. My personal opinion and belief is that the part of our soul that doesn't feel supported is our inner child. And you, adult you, or the part of you that is your highest self, can turn to your inner child and say, it's okay that you feel this way. It's okay that you feel a little lonely. You feel unsupported, but I got you. I'm the person, I'm the parent, I'm the adult that's here for you the way you didn't feel like you had a parent or an adult to protect you before. And again, this is not the solution to everything, okay? I'm not pretending to be this guru that has all the solutions for how to cope with post-election stress or post-election anticipation. I go back to what I said at the beginning of the episode. Every person was once a child. And maybe if we all did healing work with that little child part of ourselves, there would be less chaos in the world. There would be less greed, less compensation for what we feel we lack. And I do believe that we compensate for what we feel we lack in our lives by taking from others, by trying to feel better than others, because as a child, we felt like something was taken away from us. We felt like things weren't available to us. We felt like we had less than other people did. And those are traumas. And it's only human to respond to those traumas with anger and sadness, feelings of loneliness. But then we are responsible as adults for what we do with those emotions. Doesn't excuse our behavior. And that's where the inner child healing work is powerful, because we can go back to the root, as they say in therapy, right? Go back to the root. And for many of us, it's going to be a tough few next months. It's going to be a tough few next several years. Although, you know what? I really hope I'm proven wrong, because the last thing I want to do is wish my country a bad presidency. That's not good for anybody. I try and hope for the best. I'm reluctant to believe it will be all roses, but all I can do is hope for the best. And I'm going to end with one more thing, because I still feel very unsure as to how this episode is landing with people. If it's a total veer away from what I usually talk about. And it is. It is. But I've said it before. I will never say that I'm not political, because politics runs my life. The government, unless I want to live on an island somewhere, an island that is not claimed by any country, I live within a government, and the government runs my life. I pay taxes, I pay rent, and rent is regulated by this city. Sometimes I pay sales tax. I walk on sidewalks that my tax is paid for. If I'm, God forbid, in a fire, the firemen come to help. The firemen come to help me, and I pay for those firemen through my taxes. The police. Everything is connected. So politics is not separate from how I live my life. And God darn it, I'm going to have a say in politics as long as I have the right to vote. Because it's going to affect my life. It's going to affect everyone's life. And I keep that in mind. Everybody. And because it affects life, it's so intricately meshed with how we live our lives, how we navigate in the world, how we navigate in our cities, our country. There is no distinction between living our lives authentically as spiritual people and making sure that the systems in which we live, the systems in which we operate, help us to live those lives authentically. Systems created by humans so that humans can function. That's the goal, usually. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but that's the goal. And I also find it interesting how people say, it's usually people that don't agree with me that say, keep spirituality separate from your psychic mediumship. But then when we talk about one nation under God, they're like, oh yeah, one nation under God. This is a God-fearing country. It's a Christian country. Wait a second. But you're supposed to separate spirituality and politics. It just proves my point. We are spiritual people. We all are living a spiritual journey. Everything is spiritual, from sex to how we deal with addiction, to how we deal with loss, how we achieve things, how we have these life goals to feel like we're living in self-fulfillment, the way we treat our neighbors, the way we care for our neighbors. Everything is spiritual. Nothing is separate from spirituality. And everything in this world is a tool through which we can express our true selves. Every moment, every opportunity is a chance to express who we really are. And how we vote in politics is not separate from that. And that's why I think it's so important to listen, even when we disagree. If someone wants to disrespect you and label you ad hominem and make you feel less than, there's no conversation to have. Because if we want to talk like that, there's no listening. But when people are willing to listen, change can happen. There's hope. So let's see what kind of response I get to this episode. And for those of you wondering, does Spirit have an opinion on the election? I'm going to tell you something. God puts us on this planet to play in a sandbox. It's up to us in the sandbox to learn how to play with each other nicely. Do I believe God is behind the Democrats? God is behind the Republicans? I don't think it really matters. God is behind humanity. God is for humanity. But God is giving us the free will choice to learn from our mistakes, if we so want to. I think that's the goal. And you may like hearing that, you may not. And I also told somebody recently, they said, why, someone said on a social media post, a friend of mine, that they're losing their faith. And I said, please don't lose your faith. I told them, think of it this way, and this humbles me when I think this way. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans have gone through tragedies. They've gone through horrific moments, plagues, wars, huge natural disasters. How are we any different today in 2024 in the United States? Why not us? And that doesn't mean I wish bad on us. But God has always been there. Spirit has always been there throughout the ages. I've said this before. I keep saying that. I've said this before. When I get to the pearly gates, I'm going to ask God, why do children get cancer? It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm going to ask God that directly. So God, you listening? We got an appointment when I get up there. I don't get it. I don't understand why children get cancer, and it's a question I'm going to have for God when I'm at the pearly gates one day. But I still believe in a God. I still believe in Spirit. There are so many things that I don't have the answers to that I'm like, but why? Why do so many people have to perish in a war in the Middle East? Why do so many people have to be so hateful? But then I go back to inner child healing and free will choice. And it's so hard because I get so angry it breaks my heart what happens to people on this planet, in this country. I don't have the answers. But I know that spirit exists, and spirit just wants us to be our true selves and coexisting. Spirit is not about taking sides. Spirit is about seeing humanity succeed. And how we succeed is up to us. What we consider success is up to us. But I really want you to leave this podcast episode knowing that there are ways that you can care for yourself. You can work on your healing journey. That you can set kind but firm boundaries in your life with people right now. That you can look forward to exciting things in your life that are within your locus of control. You got this. You're not alone. And you're not alone in how you feel. I feel like I'm going to talk in circles if I keep talking, so I think I'm going to end it there. And this was a very vulnerable podcast episode for me because, again, I don't know if I'm going to regret this later, doing this episode. But I felt like this affected me so much in the last week. And it affected many other people in my life. It was the quietest I'd ever been. It was the quietest my job has ever been. Ever. The people at my job. Ever. In the 4 years I've been at that job. This 9-to-5 job. And someone at my job told me it's the quietest it's ever been in my career at this organization. And they've been there for maybe 8-10 years. It's having an effect on people, whether a great effect, a beautiful effect for people who are loving this news, or a not great effect for people who don't like this news. And I think there is space to honor both experiences. Doesn't mean you got to be friends with people. Doesn't mean you got to follow them. It's so funny how such a measure of friendship these days is whether I follow you or not, whether I friend you or not. But that is the world we live in. And that's up for you to decide what you're comfortable with on social media, what you're comfortable with in your relationships. I say this in every reading when I bring up a rocky relationship that is not abusive, because that's a different story. I tell people I am not the kind of psychic to tell you. I'm not going to tell you as a psychic to cut someone off out of your life. That's not my responsibility. That's not fair of me to tell you to cut someone out of your life. What I'm going to tell you is that you need to assess the energy you're giving to people in your life. It's not about keeping somebody in or cutting them off. That's not what a psychic reading is about for me as a psychic. It's about guiding you to consider the energy you're giving to people. And that's up to you to decide what you want to do with that energy. And I hope that with the energy you have right now, you can plan that exciting thing for yourself. You can work with your inner child. You can talk to your inner child and heal that inner child and tell them it's going to be okay because I'm here for you. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for indulging me and listening to me. And I think that this is prime time to be our most authentic selves. I love you all. God bless you all. And I'll see you on the next episode. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.